Hello, hello.
Hi.
You stopped the music. I have to stop dancing. Oh, well, it's fine. Hello, everybody.
My
Back
apologies to subjecting you all to Randall's dancing.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
at least not all of us. It's fine.
It's very catchy music. I was doing
Yeah,
my
it
little
is.
dance.
It's toe tapping music, so not bad. Not that these are toes, but whatever. Okay.
So I heard a rumor that Sarah pulled off a miracle.
Yay!
She managed to speak at a conference while hiding in a cabin that had no internet.
Yes, I did. To be fair, I agreed to speak at this conference when the original date was in June. And then they decided to move it to the week in July that we had agreed like 6 months ago would be the week we were in the cabin in the mountains with no internet. So yes, I had to record my talk and they played it. And I had enough internet to be on the YouTube chat to answer questions afterwards in the Q&A session. But I definitely did not have enough for like audio or video streaming. So that was my contribution. Yeah.
We muddled through. We made it.
In fact, I shared a Q&A with Max Weber and this really nice guy. I can't remember his name, but they were excellent and questions anyways. So
cool.
Let's see here.
Cool.
Q&A with Max.
Yeah, they did the Q&As like so they'd have like 3 talks, do a Q&A for the last talks instead of having one after every. So a block with him and the guy.
Okay. Very cool. Let's see here. Was it okay, oh, was it okay, it was a Q&A right after your talk. Gotcha. I was just looking at the schedule.
Okay, yeah.
Or as Simon would say, the schedule.
Yes.
Indeed. So I guess Simon's busy right now. That's too bad.
We all miss Simon. It's okay. He'll be back. Yeah. He'll be back when he's not quite as busy as all of us are.
Well, I understand he got some help with meeting hell.
Okay.
A wonderful lady by the name of Justine is rescuing him. So
cool.
That's actually helping out. I don't know that he has much more time to breathe, but he's around now.
Well, Scott, before we should actually start with who are we, and why are we here? That might help, right? A little bit. Who are we? Who are you, Scott?
Who am I? I'm Scott Stahl. I work professionally, developer relations for AppCircle. It's CI/CD for Flutter, among other things. Quick plug, easiest CI/CD in the world. I can set it up literally in under 4 minutes. Anyway, not professionally. I've been working with Flutter since 2017, which I do some professional Flutter work, and built the Flutter community with a lot of friends, and including yours truly, who are here. I'm sorry, present company. Here. Of course, yours truly is here.
Right. I would hope so.
Did I mention this is live?
It is. It is. That's the best part about this. I really enjoy this because it's live. And I'll defer to Sarah next. Who are you and how are you here?
Well, I have been working as a Flutter developer since about January of 2020. I was originally doing native and we decided to everything in Flutter. And I quit my job last week. Actually, no, it wasn't even last week. It just feels like 2 days ago, quit my job. So this period, but I'm no longer going to be doing that. And next is a secret, which I will at some point in the near future. I don't think this is the place.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It will be related to, put it that way.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I'm Randall Schwartz. I've been a GDE since before there were Flutter GDEs. So that's been a long time. In fact, they gave me the web title to start with just because they had to have something to slot me into. I've been playing with Dart since the mid 2010s, I guess is the way to put those. The dates are all weird now. It's all long ago.
I thought it started around 2012, but
yeah.
Okay. No,
whenever,
2012, 2014.
Right in there. I've been playing with Dart since then. I'm playing with Flutter since the first release, and got into the GE program really early on. But I've been an industry veteran for over 40 years, over 4 decades. So I have a little bit of background in doing almost little bits of everything. And
I had learning Perl when I was in school, and I read it from cover to cover many times. So
yes, that's one of my ways I became famous, which was writing the Perl books that became the seminal Perl books to help create the whole interactive web in the late 90s. So that's one of my other claims to fame. But right now, I am really enjoying working with the Flutter community. I'm on every single one of the things listed at flutter.dev/community. And I'm answering your questions all the time. Feels like 24/7. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and actually answer questions. So yes, I do that. And I also have, it's just something that I think needs to be done. I have answers, and I always like to share them. And I love being on shows like this where we can talk about random things and explain stuff and tell you all what's going on in the community, and we can answer questions because we do take questions. I'd prefer if you put something like a Q colon in front of your question in the chat room if you're part of the live chat.
Yeah, it does. It does help. And I'd like to point out also, Randall likes answering questions on the internet, whereas as opposed to me, I like correcting wrong information. Now, if you have ever seen that cartoon from about 10 years ago, there's someone sitting there and his wife says, "Come to bed." And he says, "I can't. Someone's wrong on the internet."
XKCD. Yes.
yes.
That's a good one. Right.
All right. And as far as flutter.dev community, right there, you can get to the Discord, the Slack. The Slack is it over 15,000 yet? 14,859 members.
So everybody else join. We go trying to get to 15,000, and then we get a prize. There you go. No,
15,000. You get a prize. You get to call yourself 15,000th. That's your prize. Either that or Randall's going to buy you something nice.
No. It certainly won't be it won't be a dash.
Oh,
I don't have my dash yet.
If we could get a hold of dashes a lot of times.
No, somebody else has a dash that I don't have. Okay.
Dashes for a while there were super scarce because what happened was the vendor had a problem.
Oh.
And then the vendor was not able to produce them apparently for several months. And poor Nilay was trying to deal with a worldwide dash shortage, and everyone wanted one. It's kind of like Purell. Because they actually make that here locally, and I happen to know someone who works at the factory and is an engineer on Purell hand sanitizer. And you want to talk about something that everybody in the world wanted. There were almost as many people wanting hand sanitizer as wanted dashes.
Wow.
There's something.
So that's
not
a
related.
lot. Trust me.
Not related at all. But
no, not at all. Okay, so a quick do's and don'ts. Don't be an idiot. How's that?
Yeah.
Be nice, respectful. Yes, it's YouTube. Do it. Be nice anyway. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive, etc. Don't advertise things. Don't spam by posting the same question over and over again. It's a guaranteed way to get us to skip your question. Okay. We do see your questions. The chat's not moving fast enough that we're going to lose it. And especially if you can see your same question 2 or especially 3 times in the window without scrolling, you can. I have seen that. Some people will post their question so often it's right there 3 times and you don't even have to scroll. No, you're not going to get it answered. So, and harassment of any kind is not tolerated. This code of conduct says failing this, you will be blocked from interacting on the chat. You will also end up blocked from the Slack, more than likely the Discord, and a whole lot of other places, because the people running these things all know each other, and we talk and we send each other emails and we belong to each other's stuff. And so if someone is the kind of person who's not wanted in one of them, you're preemptively gone in the rest. So, and that policy has actually kept things pretty decent.
I said you're not joking around. I've seen you do it.
No, it's no, yeah, we have. And it's people say, oh, the Flutter community is one of the places that has the fewest problems. Well, in large part, that's why, because a person doesn't pull something on the Discord, then just get kicked from there, and then pull something on the Slack and just get kicked from there. No, they pull something in one place, they're gone from everywhere. So, and that really helps cut down a lot on the idiocy, shall we say. So, speaking of questions, comments, criticisms, is it better to make a class for a custom widget or small function inside that class? In other words, a private build method, like build custom button or build custom list tile, something like that. And the question, it's a good question. And the answer is the same answer you get everywhere. It's called, it depends.
Right. It depends. It depends. Definitely.
How many times are you using this thing throughout your app? You're creating a custom button. That's great. But if you are reusing this button 4, 5, 6 different screens in your app, maybe it's time to make a custom class. If it's only going to appear in one screen, make it a private function within that screen, and then just return whatever it is you're doing there. But
it's trade-offs.
And I think the question also addresses the issue of when you are presented in the IDE with the option extract method or extract widget, sometimes it's like, which one of those do I do? Well, here's a rule of thumb, is that if you do an extract widget, it creates a widget boundary, which means that all the mechanism that is doing all the rendering all the way down, walking through all the different contexts and stuff, producing the various widgets, actually has a hard boundary there. So it can choose to reuse or rebuild at that boundary. If you only do the extract method, then it doesn't have a boundary like that, a hard boundary with a brand new context. And by the way, you see context all over in your app. That's a different value for every level. It's not the same context over and over and over again. It's actually a hierarchy of context. Yes, Scott.
I'm just noticing something, Randall, that one of the things I try to do is I'm thinking about this from the point of view of someone who has never heard any of this.
Yes.
When you say a different level, what Randall's talking about is that each one, a widget is a very strange concept in Flutter. A widget is always made up of other widgets. That's just the way composition works.
Yes.
But the thing is that if you have a widget and you have a build method, then you have a container and you have a function creating a custom button, and you slap that custom button in there. What Randall means is that custom button does not start a new layer because it's within the larger layer. What happens is every time you run a build method, everything stops, you create a new context.
Yes.
And within that context is Randall's layer. So if you are just using a private function to create stuff, you don't make a new context. You're still operating within that context. But if you create a new file that has its own build method, now you've created yet another level. Yes. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. Sometimes it's unnecessary. And also another thing that this depends on Are you organizing your app by type or by feature? What I mean by that is if you're organizing by type, you might have a folder with all your different screens and then another folder with all your different custom widgets that get used in those screens, various things like that. Whereas if you are packaging by feature, you'd have one folder for your, say, your settings screen, another folder for your profile screen, another folder for your main screen. If you are organizing by type, you probably just want that widget to be in one place and constantly reaching in from all your other screens and getting it from there. If you're organizing by feature, one of the main ideas of that is that those things can be worked on independently by a lot of different people. And if you get rid of a feature, you just delete its folder and it's gone. You don't have to worry about whether or not you just messed up something else. And that can be or if you orphaned something. Because if you delete a screen, then maybe you orphaned a few widgets in your widgets folder if you're organizing by type. But if you organize by feature, that's not a problem. But in order to make these features independent, then thank you, Randall. If you use the same custom button in 2 or 3 different features, there's a chance you start to get into the subjective opinion idea of whether or not to create a centralized widget for that item, because the idea of the feature is you should be able to just delete that whole folder and have it not affect anything else and for everything to be self-contained. But as soon as you start utilizing things outside of that feature folder, you're no longer self-contained. So it's a balancing act. I mean, if you have something that's getting used all over the place, then absolutely make it in one centralized place. If you're packaging by feature and you're only using it in 2 places, maybe not. Because if you ended up over time getting rid of both those, now you've orphaned something that's extraneous. And I realize that it flies in the face of do not repeat yourself. But maybe that should be looked at as do not repeat yourself more than once. Something along that line. Anyway, it's a guess. It's subjective. Who knows? But
answer that one pretty well. I think we're done.
I just saw a message. Out of Hell is apparently stuck in one call that's going to last 7 hours.
Oh,
so he's not going to be able to be with us today. And I thought Simon and Nash were spending their lives in meeting hell.
Right. We do have a couple new questions coming up on the list. But Sarah, I want to talk also about what you presented remotely at this conference. What did you talk about?
It was a improved version of the talk I gave at the Flutterista conference. So if you saw that, then you've seen most of what I did last week. So I talked about how you could make generative art in Flutter.
Yes. Oh, that was a wonderful talk.
Oh, thank you. So I made some better examples. And for those of you that have seen neither, it was a combination of like a custom painter tutorial and also a crash course in generative art and how you could use basically custom painter to create your own both static and animated pieces. And I basically just use a random number generator, but you could be fancy and use machine learning or some algorithm you make up. And yeah.
Awesome.
So, for example, one of the examples I made was to make some fireworks. So I set some basic parameters for like the fireworks must be exploding colors, lines of colors. But then the generative part is that the size and the color and the opacity and like the angle of the lines, all of that was randomized. So it looks a bit more natural. And I think it has a nice effect. So
it's really awesome how accessible custom painter makes stuff like this.
It really is. It's so easy.
It's like having the old Etch-a-Sketch, except it's all programmable. Which I was never much of an artist. My my whole goal with Etch a Sketches was to erase enough of the stuff so I could see the mechanism behind it. That was really my only goal ever, which is to do this forever until
the easier way to do that. You see, and that's the thing is, you ended up being a professional coder first. I ended up being a professional technician.
Okay.
And you could see that coming when we were new, because when I wanted to see the mechanism behind the Etch a Sketch, I flipped it upside down and grabbed a screwdriver.
Oh, yeah. Ow. Ow. Yeah, well, I hadn't thought of that. It's because I didn't want all that gray silver dust everywhere. I didn't think that would be fun. So, and your mom probably didn't want that all around either, right?
That's why you do things like that outside. Of course, when the wind blows the silver dust, it's...
Well, we do have a couple more questions if you want to highlight one of those, Scott.
Yeah, let's see here. A classic.
And, yes, we're going to get into the same religious issues. Wonderful.
Well, actually, one other one real quick. Apparently, there's always a £sign on the URL. Can you show me how to remove it? Well, number one, I don't really know how to remove it, but here's the bigger question. Why? Is this hurting anything, or is it just something you don't like when you see it? And if it's just something you don't like when you see it and it's not really affecting anything, is it really worth spending time on it? Because your users aren't staring at your location bar. Your users are staring at your content.
There is an SL on this.
Maybe it's, I don't know, but maybe think about that before you spend half an hour or an hour beating yourself up trying to find a solution to this. Maybe it's a solution to a problem that no one really cares about. And that's just a thought.
Google can be your friend in that the very first hit was, in fact, how to do that. So it's funny. I've actually taken to being slightly disliking being what I'm now calling a Google monkey on some of the chat rooms, where it's like they ask something that literally if they type that in word for word into Google, it would be the first hit. Please, people, Google's there for a reason. Not only do they give us Flutter, it's also a great search
that's a different part of Google.
Yeah, great search engine as well. And
some people don't know how to formulate good queries, though. So,
but I'm saying it's literally word for word.
You cut and paste the question that you asked.
Yes,
right in there.
Works. And it works. Yeah. So I put it in the chat. I don't know where it's going to show. Oh, it's in the chat. So the answer to your question is in the chat.
It is in the YouTube chat.
Yes.
How to remove hash from URL in Flutter Web. Not kidding. That's the name of the Stack Overflow question.
Yes. I like it when we can be that quick on these things. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How to remove hash from URL in Flutter Web.
Yeah, that was the query I used, and that was your query, and now we know. The more you know. Where's the little music?
Let's get into religions and fan clubs. And there's a bit of a difference now. There's the scientific method, there is the method of believers, and then there is the method of the fan clubs.
Yes.
So guess what, folks? It's state management time.
Woo-hoo.
Which state management do you prefer? Well, here we go again.
State management talk of the week. State management of the week. All right, here we go.
Yeah. And I have been wanting to do that roundup that I talked about a couple of months ago. The problem is I can't seem to get everybody loose at the same time.
They're all busy.
Especially now.
They're
all insanely busy. I mean, if you want to try to get Remy Rousselet, Thomas Burkhart, okay, Felix, Johnny, who else? There are several people who have written other solutions. The gentleman who did MobX.
Yep.
Everybody is so busy with work right now. We can't even get one of them, let alone all of them at the same time. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, which state management for beginners? What this comes down to is what's going to be easiest for your style. Beginners in Flutter, then the next question is, did you use anything like Redux in anything else?
Right.
So in which case you can use Redux, and Block will have a similar feel, business logic components. You see a lot of fans of GetX, but I need to be honest. Every time I talk to anyone advanced about GetX, I usually hear one of a couple things. One is that it's trying to do too many things and doesn't do any of them well. Another one is basically that it is advertised as being simple, but in reality, it ends up being simplistic, meaning that as soon as you try to go beyond anything that's simple, you outgrow it very quickly. Yes. And you have to move on to something else. Google, the Flutter team, is still recommending Provider. They have stuck with that one hardcore. Very Good Ventures, one of the leaders in making Flutter apps, Felix, who works there, is the maintainer and the big proponent of Block, which that's a perfectly fine architecture as well. Myself, Randall and I are big fans of RiverPod, which is also by Remy, the same person who created Provider. And basically, Remy wrote RiverPod to be Provider V2. It's not battle tested the way Provider is yet, so the Flutter team has not changed their recommendation. I believe at some point they will, but that's up to them. And if you really want to learn this well, there's a progression. Brian Egan, another person I would love to have on here, he created, in addition to Redux, Dart, he also takes care of a state management system called Scoped Model, which is basically, you can think of that as Provider Lite. If you learn Scope Model, it'll take you about an hour and a half to really get the hang of it. It's quick, it's easy. And the thing is that Provider is just a little bit more advancing in that same way of doing things, in that same approach. And then you can learn Provider fairly quickly. You build on Scope Model. And then when you move on to RiverPod, it's kind of a sidestep from Provider. It's the same basic idea, but it's a bit of a different way of thinking, because in Scope Model and in Provider, you're passing everything down through the widget tree. And in RiverPod, you're completely ripping it out of the widget tree, but you're still propagating it in a similar fashion.
Right.
So exactly. For beginners, I personally recommend Scope Model. And then as soon as you master Scope Model in 2 hours, don't try to use it in an app. Pick up Provider. Scope Model is a great way to help you learn Provider faster. And then you can use Provider as long as you want. The Flutter team is still recommending it. And yeah, I'm sorry. And now I have babbled quite a bit. I am going to mute myself.
Okay. I will say this about RiverPod. I've been using it in earnest in a commercial act. I'm building an app with a client. And every time I've reached for a way to do something with RiverPod, it's been there. There has been a way to get it everything I possibly need. And it is acted 100% correct from the way that
Randall, I want to, now this is for you. And this is very, in my opinion, this is extremely related to what you're talking about right now.
Sure. Let's see. Is it? Okay.
Is that, or is that not RiverPod?
I think it's asking whether something like Provider and Inherited Widget would be useful.
Yes, but if you lift everything up out of the tree and you make it a global declaration, RiverPod.
Well, RiverPod isn't necessarily global, and that's the big misconception about it. It's variable scoped. It's the same scope as any variable, which means it can be local to a class, local to I have a lot of RiverPod providers that are actually local to a widget tree, just because it happens to be where they get defined and all that stuff. They're defined inside the build method using RiverPod hooks.
Instantiated, right?
Yeah. And
that's the weird thing about it, though. It's declared globally, but it's instantiated and used locally.
It doesn't have to be declared globally either. It can be declared with relative scope. It definitely has happened that I've had it declared locally in libraries, for example, underscore provider names, things like that. That's clearly not global scope anymore. So the thing is, you control it the same way you control variables. And so it's really, really nice because that's a much more known technology than all this context tree that a lot of us are struggling with when we're trying to do provider. Provider, you have to understand making sure that when you navigate, you stay within the same tree, or all of a sudden your providers are gone. I've seen that problem over and over again in all the chat rooms. So I think RiverPod in general. But here's the caution I would use with RiverPod at the moment. Still, there is a stable release at something like 0.14 or something like that. That's what I'm using in production. 1.0 is right around the corner. 1.0, Remy did some changes to unify a couple of the basic concepts about how providers in the RiverPod arena can talk about each other. He's made some simplifications for that. And it's wonderful stuff. I haven't played with it yet, but it looks wonderful. But it is a breaking change. However, Remy, bless his soul, has come up with a source-to-source translator, a fixer, the same way we have Dart Fix and Dart Migrate. He's built one for RiverPod to be able to translate accurately, source-to-source, fix your sources up so that it's compatible with 1.0 RiverPod. Wow. So I'm looking forward to the day I want to tackle that with my current project.
There's an unbelievable secret about Remy. If I remember correctly, we had this conversation a long time. Yeah, really. Not only are there 3 of him, they don't drink coffee.
Oh,
how do you do everything he does without rocket fuel?
Superhuman.
So, Sarah, what do you do for state management?
I have not tried RiverPod, I have to admit that, but I have had a lot of success with both block and provider. I think they're both fine and great. I like block for managing streams and like internet connections and things like that. Just because it's sort of built in. I mean, it's built in with provider too, but it just feels more natural for me to do it that in block. And then I like provider for getting values to tree. So I often use both and do different things with them. Cool. Same app, but it's a matter of taste. I think like you could easily just use only provider, only block, and be fine.
Yep.
But
it's whatever gets the job done at the end of the day. And
a lot of the people who write these things will tell you it depends on what you already know.
Right.
And can get the app knocked out with. If you are already good with Redux, even though it might be a little overkill for what you're doing, if you can knock it out with Redux and write good code, faster than you could learn anything else, then get this thing knocked out, build a client, and move on. So
I think we've nailed this one for this week.
To a wall.
It'll come up next week again, though. Somebody will say, "What about GetX again?" And
of course,
I'll just say no. That's all I'm going to say. Just say no.
I mean, I've actually never tried GetX because people keep telling me to avoid it, but so many people use it. Like it must be okay.
I keep seeing a lot of beginners talking about it, but I don't know. It seems that's why I say it seems to have a huge fan base.
Yeah.
But when I talk to all the main people, when I talk, Adehella's tried it. He is using Redux professionally right now on something, and I believe he normally does Provider. Felix, Simon, Aikish, Mark and Mark. Just about everyone.
Majid was all about block. Majid
What's
is all about block. He's the one
all about block.
So
yeah, and it's a lot of people have tried it, but they use other things in production. And who knows? But right now, I happen to know from personal experience that Provider's the one recommended by Google. Remy, who wrote Provider, likes Riverpod, and he says that's where things are going.
Yep.
And I know from personal experience, the fastest way to understand Provider is to take an hour and a half to learn Scope Model and then jump straight into Provider.
Right.
So, Robert, how you doing, man?
Robert,
we got to get you on the show.
It's the
hey,
man.
Get in here.
Yeah, I talk with him all the time on his new Discord. It's been fun.
Yes. So, I am trying to figure out the database question that is in chat.
Me too.
Randall, do you understand that one?
Let's see. Well, whenever is it better to build? I always want to wonder, as opposed to, what is it you're trying to compare with building your database on a Linode server? With what? With hosting it on Firebase? With hosting it as an SQL server somewhere? I don't know the other side of your question, and
it seems more of a.
Yeah.
It's not really a Flutter question. It's more of a back-end architecture question, which I don't know. Maybe you guys are qualified to answer, but
it's only what I did for years. But yeah.
Oh, right. Hey, I didn't know that. Okay, well,
I'm only qualified to push buttons behind stage and make things pop up. And this is why I have you two.
Yeah, like I can answer Flutter questions, but this is out of my purview.
The thing about databases is they live somewhere, and the main division of SQL versus NoSQL is a fun division, and not so arbitrary anymore. There are actually some databases like Postgres that can handle more unstructured data in the same sort of structured tables. So it's not as clear anymore that there's a division. But that's what I'm saying. I don't know, Mr. Rialty, is when you say, is it better than what, compared to what? And under, as Scott said a few minutes ago, depends on things you aren't talking about yet.
Yeah.
So that
a lot of people, if you want to get something running quick, is just use Firebase. Firebase and Flutter go really nicely together. And if you're doing something small and easy, just do that.
And there's a free tier, so you can.
The free tier is great.
Yeah.
So, Scott has
sometimes when we have particularly difficult technical questions, you can have little birdies whisper answers in your ear. In our case, I think there might be a ghost creeping around that has been gone for a long time, but maybe can rise from the dead.
What?
I don't know. What do you think? Simon.
Hello. I'm back.
Really? Wow.
Hello.
It's long the man, the legend.
Don't get carried away.
You didn't want
to
that
much me up on a pedestal, and I want to achieve it. So
or a pedal stool.
Right.
Wait. Yeah. I'm out of uniform here. There we go.
There we go. Yeah. Nice.
How is everyone?
Doing well.
Going insane. How about you?
Good.
I've been insane from the day one.
Yeah, going.
You guys
wouldn't be
had
the word.
meetings all day, but you know what's going on in my house? Because I just to be something different than meetings. I've been potty training all day.
Oh,
Yes.
I thought you
Oh,
were
Scott.
already potty trained.
a new high and
I
high and
have
low for the show. Yes,
I have a
new high
little
and
girl
low.
who just turned 3, and we decided, you know what? Now is the time. Before she goes back to daycare next week, we want her to just do the
Wow.
final push this week. So
Final
I
push.
think we had
No.
some breakthroughs today, and
There you go.
it's looking good. It's really good.
If you can get this done in a week, I will be amazed.
So you've been in
Well,
meetings.
if you can learn Dart in a week, you can get potty trained in a week, right?
You can learn Dart. No.
Exactly.
No.
Same thing.
It's like the old joke. Okay, the manager is training the new hire, and they say we're gonna play a little game. I'm gonna call down to IT and get them started on your email address, and then we're gonna start training you Dart, and see which one finishes first. And somebody walking by the door leans in and says, "I got $20 on Dart."
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Speaking of somebody's voice.
So Simon,
yeah,
how
they're
is
watching
life
cartoons.
in the?
Yeah. How has Simon been?
We keep talking about how much Flutter work there is out there, and how it's keeping people busy. From your perspective, I understand you just had to bring on somebody to try to organize everything because you were drowning.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
So what's going on over there?
What can I talk about? Well, I guess I can tell you about this. So I've been working on an app for a national store over here called Tool Station. They funny enough sell tools. Another DIY paraphernalia. So think of what's the DIY Home Depot you have in America, right? It's that kind of like store. They've got 500 locations nationally, and they also have stores in Belgium, Netherlands, and France, I believe.
Wow.
And built their app in Flutter. There you go. In 12 weeks. One e-commerce app in 12 weeks. So
so you've been busy.
But you had 100, but the thing is that you build all those hours because you have 100 developers working on this.
I wish. Do you know what? Even if I don't wish that, because I can tell you what would happen is it wouldn't get done if you had 100 developers.
Have more
right?
Put
there was
3 developers
on average,
on an app and get out of the way.
I think on average there's 3 to I'd say maybe 4 developers on 3 or 4 developers on average throughout the project.
Yeah.
So not a huge team, but there's a limited scope of what you can do all at the same time, and that was designing and building the thing.
Wow.
And 2 weeks discovery. So
have a dedicated designer, or the Flutter also the designer?
You broke up there, Sagan.
You're breaking up, Sarah.
Oh no. Did a designer, the Flutter developers?
Yeah. No, we had separate designer, product manager, and all that. So helps, and we also had a team working inside of Tool Station doing the back end.
A real quick thing I just want to put out there. We originally wanted this show to be a recap of last week's conference. I also did just happen to hear from Anna, who was the organizer of the conference. She's going to be with us at a later time. So let's push that until we can get Anna herself. But, we've got plenty of things going on right now to keep going with the show. And one other thing, really, Simon, when we were talking about 100 developers versus
I've got to do something first. Off with the old, on with the new. Okay. They're totally different. You can completely tell the difference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. How many fingers am I holding up?
The frames aren't that different. Anyway. Yeah.
There's a book you recommended to me, and quite a while ago, but it was the whole idea of how many developers does it take to screw in a light bulb? I mean, write an app effectively. And I think the number they came up with, the best number was 3. Because after that, once you start throwing bodies at it, all you do is lose time in meetings trying to coordinate them.
I can't remember. I mean, there's talk around that for a long time, right? I think it depends on the project, really, right? It really does. Like you can put it's really about the project and what crosses what sort of features cross each other. Because as soon as you can work on things independently to a point, and then you have to work together, right? So I think it really depends on
how far developed the project is, I think. Because if you're just starting,
I'm talking about like a greenfield project, right? Like brand new, right? But yeah, if you've got an existing project, that's a different thing entirely.
Yes. Because if you're just starting, you need a few people to like discuss the architecture and get that in place. And then once you sort of have buckets you can fill, you can delegate that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was very much a dance to try and get all of this in, and I mean, it's a national product. I mean, it's only been released 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe, and there's 20,000 users with no advertising. This is a soft launch, so not bad going, and the numbers show that. I think the only crashes we've been seeing has been in the payments provider, which is external library. So,
and there's a lot of moving smoke and mirrors always.
Mm.
Payments is just an insane area because of all the legacy systems written in COBOL. Pretty sure they're all in.
To be honest, things have moved on. But I think it's more about the fact that if you're dealing with money, you have to get it right.
Yeah.
It's that simple. You can't just mistakenly double a number or add an extra zero, because things definitely go wrong, right? Like you have to ensure that there are no mistakes when dealing with money.
Right. Yes. The Perl job, my last Perl job that I had probably in my career, I fired them about a month ago, and it was all about financial transactions. And I was getting tired of looking at a 400-page spec about what I had to get right with small bullets, 10 bullets per page. Yeah, that was a little too much. So, adios.
On a different topic, really quick. Everybody wants a dash, and
yep.
Randall kind of put his foot down on that one.
Yeah,
he's one of the original Flutter GEEs, and he still doesn't have one yet.
I know.
Actually, another thing though is
stop it.
when people are in, it can really depend on what country you're in, and it's unfortunate. People are not trying to discriminate, but like I ended up sending one to Nash. I am not kidding. It was $70 to send something that weighs about 300 grams.
Wow.
To get it to Nash. And I even smashed it down. But there are some places you just can't even ship to. I mean, things will get caught up at the border and never released. You
just little dashes sitting in customs somewhere.
Oh no! You just reminded me. I saw a video on YouTube about Apple releases AirTags. Have you seen these AirTag things? They're called AirTags. You can put them in stuff, and apparently every iPhone, they automatically connect to every iPhone nearby and upload their position or something. It's some magical network of things. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, and this guy tried to ship some stuff to North Korea with an AirTag inside to show that where its route was and how it was going. And he was following the shipping company, and they just left it in different depots and said they couldn't find it. And he's like, I know where it is. I'll go get it.
Right. Wow.
It's just quite funny. It's like some YouTube thing, but it just reminds me of that kind of when you think about international shipping and where your parcel actually has to go, it's nuts. It really is.
Yeah, it's just it is insane, and I've made the suggestion that they try to find local suppliers who can make them in countries like that. But the problem then is
quality.
trying to get it consistent.
Yeah,
consistent quality, and you could end up with the feet on top, or a dash in purple. Whatever.
Newton dashes.
Yes.
There you go. I'm sure that's not what Shams had in mind when she waved her magic needle and created the first dash.
So what are we talking about? What's the subject if it's not going to be Flutter Global Summit?
Well, we have had a number of questions. In fact, one that we weren't quite able to take a look at, and I think Randall kind of addressed it, but what do you think of that one?
I mean, is it better to build or host your database on, for example, a Linode server, or build an API to interact with it? Is this advisable regardless of time? Okay, I'm getting leave the question on the screen for a second. Sorry, Scott.
Sorry.
So, I mean, I'm assuming the guy's talking about directly calling the database, or would you build an API in front of the database?
It's hard to tell what he was asking.
Build an API and building it is it better to host your own database and build an API to interact with it? Better than what?
Yeah, exactly what I said.
I think the difference here, and I'd say you guys were talking about Firebase, right? Like, and other things like that. So when you have a pre-made solution that isn't open source, that isn't, that's essentially Go, Superbase, whatever. There's a ton of them out there that you go and then you use their service and they run the database. They do everything for you and everything else. Or is it good to run your own? And it's really about, I think it's kind of really about experience and budget and various other things. So, for example, from a small startup perspective, if you can get going without hosting your own database when using some cloud solution, that's always going to be an instant win. And that really helps with the speed of development, right? However, you need to make sure that you box in that implementation. What I mean by that is you don't shove Firebase across your application and use Firebase everywhere, because then you're essentially causing yourself to be almost hard-coded to Firebase, right? Like, it's going to be very difficult to remove Firebase from the mix later. So always put an interface in front of any external service so that you can swap that out later, is what I'd say. So that's just good practice, right? For future proofing. And also keep in mind that if it does grow, you don't want to be paying the fees for a hosted solution when it is cheaper, and it's definitely cheaper for a larger company to have the database themselves and pay people to manage the database for them. So actually have staff, and the actual cost is more in the staffing than it is with the hosting and so on, right? But it's still going to be cheaper than paying on a per request basis for like a huge service supplier to do it for you. And the lines blur and it does vary, I'm not going to lie, but there's definitely something I'd say about experience, right? Like, do it yourself. If this is your own app, do it yourself. Set up a server, get a database running, have the experience of building an API in front of it and doing that, because you're going to learn a lot, right? You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to take that into the next place. And there's a certain amount of reflection that happens. And what I mean by that is, if you build your own database, if you build your own API in front of a database, you go, well, hang on a minute, how is Google doing this thing with Firebase? And it's like, they did it the same way. So when you've got a question, why can't I sort by this value? Oh, it's because of this. And like, things will start clicking because you've had that extra experience of implementing it yourself. So I think there's no better, right? Better is is an imaginary concept here, right? Like, I think it's about what works for you.
Just don't forget to build in that extra layer so that if you want to change the DB in the future, you can decouple without having to change your whole app, because your app is actually using your own API that you built. And then you can alter that API to work with a different database without having to do your whole app again.
There's also this thought that not just from the app perspective, but also on the server side, what most people don't realize, and it's something that you have to be involved with project for a long time to really understand this, and that is it's not over, right? Like what you're building right now is going to be pretty much thrown away probably, right? Like in terms of the database might have to be migrated. It might not be a perfect solution for the previous things. Now there's a bunch of stuff you have to do to get your app to migrate its local caches and move all this. And there's a lifetime to a product, to an app, right? That most people don't, unless you're running a product and you're involved in a product for a long period of time, you don't really see that. You don't just build it and forget about it. It doesn't stay on Firebase. It doesn't stay the way you made it originally. That's just its initial spark of a concept. So yeah, I think you have to be really willing to let go of your choices, right? So you make a choice to use Firebase, you need to make sure, and this goes again where you're building something yourself, you need to, if you get to a point down the road and go, this isn't working anymore, this is so difficult to use, this is not the way I thought it was going to be, drop it, do something else, try something else, don't box yourself in. Sorry, I know that was a just rant,
that's fine. A couple things I want to touch on, one real quick, and I don't really want to dive into this can of worms. We're just going to do a drive-by, maybe get some fries with that as we go past. And then I understand Sarah's actually been involved in something a little interesting. But first, basically, they're trying to upload something to the Play Store, and they want to verify that they're in the Play Store wants to verify they're in the US, they're in Ethiopia. How can they verify? So let me get this straight. You're asking us how to instruct you to basically commit fraud trick the Play Store. No.
It's basically it's when you sign up for a developer account, you get asked to pay $25, and it wants to verify your account that you are who you say you are when you sign up. But it's saying that the country picker is stuck in USA. It's probably because his Google account is set to the USA. So he needs to go into his Google account settings, change his country location on his Google account, and when he does a incognito window and starts in fresh, so he clears the cache, it'll probably be the new country that's selected default in the list.
There you go, Mika. And I'm sorry because the way you phrased it. Sure.
Is it that easy to change the country of your Google account? I thought maybe it was one of those. Okay, so it's not fixed like your name. Okay.
No, I don't believe so. I think it's just one of those. Your name's not fixed either. You can change your name.
Okay. I'm confused.
I'm pretty sure. You may have just hit something on the head there. Oh my God. I'm pretty sure you can change your name. Yeah, was it account.google.com or something?
Oh, there you go. And I'm sorry, Mika, the way it was phrased, it made me think that you were trying to, ask us how you can trick them. Whereas it looks like all you have to do is change your country.
I interpret
it. And in the meantime, while Simon's going to dig into this.
So you can change your name, and I can't see a way of changing your country, but you can change your language, which might be enough to change your location. However, it might be that you signed up on Google. It might be that you signed up on Google.com and it's saying that you're an American. Yeah. Maybe sign up on the Ethiopian Google website, and then that will give you an Ethiopian account. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then go register that on the Play Store.
What you might want to do at that point then is tell them that there was a mistake made in creating it, and see if you can get your $25 back, and then restart the way Simon's saying.
Just make another account and use that as your developer's account that you submit your stuff on, and keep your personal account as it is. I would not submit an app under my personal account, because if you get a red flag on the App Store because someone hates you, or they're trying to, who knows what might happen, right? Someone might be faking comments saying it's doing one thing. They will take down your personal Google account. You won't get it back. They will just cancel the account. So don't release any apps under your personal Google account. That simple.
There you go. So moving on, Sarah, you actually have been involved in something recently, haven't you? Other than quitting your job.
Wait, Amy, you quit your job? What have I missed?
I quit my job. Yes. I did that a few days ago. It felt really good. But the last few weeks, I, on the side, was helping a school in the US called the Geekle School. And they are creating a Flutter app to have a virtual learning platform for their students. And it is still very much under development. And I'm not working on it anymore because I've got a new job and I don't have time for it. But they've got good people and it's coming along. And they're going to be doing a whole bunch of different subjects there. But the things worth noting for this show is that the whole thing is written in Flutter, and one of the classrooms they will have is a Flutter classroom that is specifically for kids who have a child interested in Flutter, a niece or godchild or neighbor, check them out.
Logarithmic.
Yeah, I was gonna say just logarithmic, right?
Exponential, not a logarithm.
Whatever it is, yeah, like it is just like
okay.
That's
exponential, logarithmic.
Not the same thing
Fast.
at all. The math geeks in the listening are going nuts right now.
And do check out what Sarah was saying. I'm sorry, I just happened to see that, and
yeah, Flutter's growth is wonderful. I am full-time employed in Flutter. I know a lot of other people that are getting multiple job offers, trying to figure out what to do.
Here you go.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Click on this, and that will take you to what you want.
Simon's telling you to click on something. I don't know. This could be phishing.
Thanks.
So
Thanks.
There's somebody here. I can't recognize this person. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's. Do they have some fuzz on their lip? I don't know. It's Robert.
Hey,
Robert.
how are you all doing?
Something's growing on your
Doing
face,
good.
man. I think you need to
Doing
clean
good.
your face.
Yeah.
Like,
What
Yeah, I
happened?
know,
Man?
Well, I mean, during the pandemic, you're home most of the time, so I might as well just
right.
leave
See
it
what
grow.
happens.
Yeah.
Have you got past the itchy? Have you got past the scratchy, itchy phase?
Yeah, mostly. So
Wait a minute.
I
I'm
think-
not past the scratchy, itchy phase. I just have to
Itchy's
keep
beard
trimming
oil.
it to keep it down.
Beard oil. Keep it.
So this is the most I ever had. So I don't know how it comes, if it's more or whether I can actually grow more. So I don't know.
In time. Is this the website? Sarah?
Yes. Yes. So there's the website.
Now that we have some more wonderful guests, and you may have noticed that a small child came here to tell me that she had peed, I think I am going to say goodbye.
Might be time for Mama to make an exit.
Yes.
Thanks for coming
Nice
by.
to see you all again. I don't think I've met you before,
Yes.
Norbert. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I wish you all a wonderful Wednesday afternoon or evening.
It's really sad that you two didn't meet in New York. Well, you were there, weren't you, Sarah?
I haven't been to any live Flutter events because I got into Flutter January of 2020. It's great
I was
timing.
thinking that you were in, yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So looking
Majid.
forward to future conferences. I think Majid wants to do things live. I'm not sure if it's going to happen. It's like way more work, but we'll see. And if it is, you can come to Oslo. It'll be
Yes.
Definitely.
here, and yeah, or whatever other Flutter conferences. I'll be there for sure. So
All right. Nice to see you.
bye.
Nice.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh boy. Let me say, I would just like to remind people, please don't spam the same question repeatedly. If you can see it twice in the chat without scrolling, you're spamming. So, yeah. Let me see here. There is a question about, is there a degree for Flutter? Flutter isn't really taught at university. Or any kind of a certification. That question has come up many times among, how can I say this? Among people who would be in a position to possibly put together a certification. And every single time anyone asks about it, everyone comes up with the same question. And that is, actually, there are two. First of all, who gets to make the determination about what certification is, and number two, who's going to decide what's in it and what gives them that right to. And everybody looks around and says, well, we're just going to skip this and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
That's why there's no Flutter certification. No one wants to try to claim they have the right to say what you need to know, or take on the responsibility of trying to set up what those guidelines are. And remember, Flutter's an open source project. Okay. The Flutter team is working very hard to try to make it a lot better, but it, in the end, is still open source. Google's not going to turn around and say what does or does not make a Flutter expert. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Udemy's got a Flutter developer bootcamp.
Yes.
And
that's,
there's also...
that's the same one from the London App Brewery, isn't it? That's Angela Hughes.
Yeah, Angela Yu. Yeah, Dr. Angela Yu.
If you go directly to the London App Brewery, you can get that course for $10. It was created with London App Brewery and the Flutter team working together. And my understanding is that Google underwrote a lot of the costs for creating that course, and that's why you can get it for $10.
I wonder if Udacity have anything at the moment.
Not sure. I think, you know, while we've got you here, Norbert, talking about education and learning things, how can I learn what's going on inside my app? I wonder.
Segue.
Well, that's a nice segue, yeah. So I'm pretty sure you want to stir towards my long-term project, which I've been tinkering with, which is called Detective. So there's actually a couple of interesting new things which aren't really too much advertised just yet because I'm kind of still stabilizing it. But the thing Scott is getting at is I've been building a tool which is supposed to help you with day-to-day tasks like debugging, invoking stuff, and just interacting with your app. And so you can already take a sneak peek. I cannot promise anything about its workings, but I'm working on an IntelliJ plugin, which, in my opinion, makes using the app so much easier because you can just be inside IntelliJ, tap a button, and have your observation or your function invoked. The plugin is already live. The issue is there's on some systems it still doesn't really work, and I'm working on fixing that. And once that's done, I will be more confident of officially announcing it. And
it doesn't work on Windows. Is that what you're trying to say? That only works on Mac?
So it actually works on Windows 2 and on Mac. So the issue is it works on my machine, and I have other people, or at least one other person where it doesn't work.
It's one of those
I have no idea why.
It works for me. It works for me.
Frankly, I have no idea why it doesn't work. It should be working. So yeah, I'm kind of tracking that down right now.
Just start renting out remote time on your machine.
It reminds me of a story, and I understand there were a lot of people in the Android world
Timeshare mainframe. Sorry.
who refuse to update because as soon as they do, a lot of times their dependencies break and dependencies of dependencies break, and you end up in dependency hell trying to figure out how to get things to work as soon as you update. And I've run into people who want to take the same philosophy in Flutter, but the problem is, number one, in Flutter, we all stay updated, and the plugins stay updated. And another important thing is that the CI/CD, because it's creating VMs and installing Flutter every time, it's almost assuredly installing the latest. So here's what happens. You create your code on your machine and you refuse to update, and you mark down which plugin versions you're using. So it runs just fine on your machine. And then you push it, it goes up and the tests run on the CI/CD, which installs the newest version of Flutter, and says, these plugins don't work on this version of Flutter, and your tests fail. And then what happens is the team turns around and says, well, it works just fine locally. It must be a problem with the person who set up the CI/CD. Not that I know anything about this, but You notice Simon's trying to not smile. Anyway, but the fact is, you want to keep it updated, right, Norbert?
So regarding this, actually, I have a project, and this project may or may not be detective, where I have a hash of a commit version hard-coded into my CI/CD because I don't want to update just yet. But that's not the issue. The issue lies inside the actual IntelliJ plugin, unfortunately. So the interesting, or not the interesting, but the cool thing is everything that's inside Flutter land, I don't even have to test it cross device, like on macOS, Windows, or Linux, because I know that's going to work. The only thing that breaks is currently the way you launch it. Environment variables, passing stuff. Like on macOS, you have a different command to run an app, like an application, compared to Windows. And that's the thing that's breaking right now, because some people have it installed this way, some people have an environment variable not set, and that's like always very hard to reproduce, because if there's one tiny change, it may be working on your system, but may not be on another system. So yeah, but everything in Flutterland is working great. I never had issues with anything inside the application being broken on different devices. That's like magical.
There's a question about CI/CD with GitLab specifically, and asking, other than AppCircle, so I can't plug my work, really, that you're going to want to. I do developer relations for a DevOps company. You're going to want to ask a DevOps expert that one more than likely. Although I have seen people do it with Jenkins. What's up, Simon?
I said I can tell you the answer to this one.
No, you've never worked DevOps.
And I was going to say GitLab allows you to set up free build servers. So basically, you install the install the GitLab build server system on your machine, and then you link it to your GitLab account to your project. And then every time you do a build, it does the CI/CD and it's running on your machine, but the results go up to GitLab.
Yep, and that will work just fine. Although if you hit a point of frustration where you feel you're better off just paying $40 a month, then take a look at my work. But in the meantime, go for it.
It's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. Like, you still got to set it all up and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, you can do anything for free. You can. It's just a question of how much sweat equity, as we say, do you want to put in? Let's see here. Here's an interesting one that a lot of us have talked about. Can we do an Expo for Flutter?
There's been many Flutter events and conferences. What particularly are they asking? Like,
I think a lot of folks coming into it were not around pre-COVID. We're not around for Flutter pre-COVID, so they didn't see events like Flutter Europe and such.
Yeah.
There is a lot of talk about trying to do an in-person event again as soon as it's feasible, but there are a couple of hurdles. One is trying to get enough people who can break free and go there in person in order to run the event, organizers, speakers, and such. Another one is that, and it's funny, these are opposite problems. It's hard to get enough to organize and speak sometimes because they can't break away from work. Whereas the number of people who would want to attend, we believe we would need to figure out somewhere big enough. And, somewhere with enough hotel accommodations and such.
I think we're slightly off the topic because they're not talking about an event. They're talking about this thing called Expo. And I Googled for React Expo. I got the page that I linked in the chat room.
Okay. Let's see.
And it looks like some sort of framework and platform for universal React applications.
Oops, sorry. Set
of tools and services built around React Native and things like that. So I don't know anything about this. I can't answer it except as quickly as I can read. But I don't know if there would be a need for that around Flutter, and if there isn't one already planned.
to make development easier.
Yeah. Well, how can it get much easier?
I mean, that's exactly. I was going to say. It can't. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
If you're asking for stuff to make, there's ton. Like, just go pub.dev. There's loads of tools and services and things, and people's ideas.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not one thing that I would say. This. I'm not saying that. I don't think there's any one thing that I'd say this matches what Expo is or does.
The main thing that Expo does that Flutter might need a little bit of help with is making the install easier, I believe.
I mean, I'm looking at this, like starting the build, over there updates, internal distributions, triggering it. I don't know, like app signing. I don't know what this is. It's a framework, but I'm not sure what it's doing to actually give you.
In the chat room, Antonio just said Flutter has enough tools, no need for an Expo-like project. So probably,
yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Apparently, I'm going to butcher your name. I'm sorry, but Kier, is there any certification for Flutter like Associate Android Developer? We actually answered that about 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
So if you just take the YouTube and scroll back about 10 minutes, you'll be all set.
Rewind the internet.
Yes.
Just scroll it back to the previous spot. Yes.
So yeah, we actually did just cover that in depth because someone was asking if there's a degree.
Yes.
So let's see here.
Say about Remy. We talked about Remy.
This is funny. This is one of the funny ones. Remy Rousselet. Is Riverpod provider freezed, etc., making Flutter next level? Why would we say anything about that? You just did. Made our life easier. Now we don't have to.
Yeah.
But no, seriously. Hooks, freezed, Riverpod, and State Notifier all work together to be a complete solution. And as Randall said earlier, 1.0 is coming. So yeah, that's It's a very big deal.
Yeah, it's the 1.0 is going to be really significant, I think, in terms of adoption, because Remy's been suggesting for a long time that he was going to make that one final breaking change and was worried about how to do that. Now that he has the tooling that will automatically fix up very interesting, complex relationships. To go from old school Riverpod to modern Riverpod and source-to-source translation, this will be fun to be able to move to.
I was going to say there's the interesting thing about this, and that is something that was said. What was it in March? Was it March when the Google event dropped? There was a talk. I forgot his name. The language guy from the Dart team did that talk about
Michael Thompson.
No, generated code, and they called it meta. Was it meta compilation? I think they were calling it basically. Yeah. What was his name?
The
name just escapes me.
Yeah,
it's really going to bug me now. Anyway, but it is.
Where's Kate Lovett when we need her?
Right. The interesting thing about Flutter is what makes these things that make Flutter better are all code generators, right? They're all things that we know from the day one. They help you generate the code, and the point here is that the Flutter team themselves are trying to integrate that better into the pipeline, so that the added benefits of the instead of adding things to the language, they can add things on top of the language easier and faster, and that's where this meta stuff comes in. So right. There's a package that manages resources and generates code for you, and it's linked up to the Flutter generate command. I forget the name.
Too bad Kev Moo's not here. He would answer it right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Please don't spam the same question repeatedly. There's a question, then a comment, then the same question again. No, not going to be answering questions when people do that. We had mentioned many times, please don't spam. let's see here. Suggest an intermediate project to learn Flutter. I suggest you go to Google and you type Flutter Code Labs.
Ah, yes.
You'll get all you need.
Found it.
So just Flutter Code Labs.
If anyone hasn't seen this, Flutter Gen. It's a really interesting package. It basically does the sort of that notion of generating code to help you access assets and manage configurations and so on. But yeah, works really quite well.
You said it was hooked up to the Flutter build command. What does it mean?
So there's actually a command called Flutter Generate. I think it's only in the beta version.
Oh, I see.
And it does that kind of thing where it's like, the idea is, I think, and do you remember, I think from day one, we were asking, can we please have like a watch capability? So when we modify these things, like it would automatically regenerate some Dart files, so it's instantly in your project and so on. So yeah, there's, it's that kind of notion.
Basically, it's just a shortcut for the build runner, build, or watch, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is particularly around resources and doing some other things.
Well, I mean, like
but what Flutter Generate is trying to do, is very much that trying to, because the problem here is the Flutter build runner build is outside of the pipeline, right? So it builds, and then you have to essentially rebuild the app, right? Now they can make meta use of the caches and the way that it sends it over to the hot reload and everything else works to take advantage of what the output of code generation is. So it's about bringing those two bits together to streamline the process, as far as I'm aware.
That is pretty cool.
Also, we have, if anyone has any questions about the internal workings of, the Dart environment and so on, I'm sure we have a person on the stream that can help us out, Norbert. Norbert's the king of this. Like, I remember me and Norbert, I was showing Norbert some things, and now I don't know. Norbert knows more than me about it.
Well, a bit. I've been doing a bit of research. Let's say it this way.
One quick point here. Something near and dear to my heart. Don't make your website in Flutter. Flutter makes web apps, not websites. If you're going to make a single page website, okay. But if you're going to make a multi-page website, Simon and I did some tests on this, even one that's just 3 or 4 pages. The SEO examinations showed that it takes about 5 seconds to load, and it thinks that it's actually loading just the first page when it's actually loading the whole site.
It's not ready for the SEO.
It slaughters you. Well, but the thing is, too, it was never meant to be. It was never meant to make a whole website. Yeah, it's meant to make a web app.
So the idea is that that notion of you have your website and then you log into the app, and then the app is actually the separate piece of work that is essentially the product but running on web, right?
Yeah.
Anyone ask you questions? Please feel free while we're here.
Let's see here.
Better to ask them while we're here. Yes.
Oh,
after we leave, there's not really any point of asking questions.
I think we should have no. Do you remember? No, but do you remember the Flutter news? Flutter, what was it called? Flutter Weekly News, whatever it was you were doing. The Flutter Coffee Time. I can't remember what it was called.
Oh, the coffee show, yeah.
Coffee show. That was it. Sorry. Yeah, they had the packages on there. I really like that. And I'm just going to spoil this question for a second and just say this is a package that I think Norbert's going to like, and I absolutely love right now. Hot Reloader. Now, this literally is completely pointless for anyone that's doing Flutter work. This is more about Dart server side and Dart work. Well, put it this way: if I'm building a CLI application, I can hot reload it. If I'm building a server side component, I can hot reload my server side component. It sorts all that out for you.
Oh, this is what you were playing with the other day for your website, for your web app. Yeah.
So basically, yeah.
So basically, all of this uses the Dart service under the hood. So basically,
it just hooks up with the Dart VM service package and everything, right? But it just means that it's just triggering so that when a hot reload takes place and it does that, you can trigger some of your components, your app to restart using the new code, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so auth and Facebook auth, and also email auth. Go straight out. I'm not quite sure.
So I can get, basically, is there a way to get all up and running inside your project easily? Yeah, Firebase auth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Firebase auth has always
Enable the
handled
bots,
all that.
follow the guides, get the right tokens and API keys and whatever else set up, and you're good to go.
And Ahmad, I don't think you're understanding. And am I okay? Nope, I saw Norbert blink, so I think I am still here. You're asking about slow loading and SEO in Flutter Web, and that's what we're talking about. Don't make a website with Flutter. We're talking about you make the web app with Flutter. It's basically, if you were using Vue.js, how would you do this? Then do that. Okay, it's the same thing, because you're creating the web app in Flutter. You shouldn't be creating the whole website, and you won't have any of these slow loading and SEO problems.
Here's another one. How do you make HTTP data save on cache memory? Exactly that. Save it in memory. Sorry, I'm not like, you just have a variable with the string.
Are you talking about like shared preferences or?
And return that. No, it was in memory, right? So it's a variable. That's all it is, like a list. Make a list that is, make a map that is key string, which is the URL that you're fetching, and then a string, which is the response body. That's it. You've made yourself an in-memory cache. And if you're smart about it, you can do things like only keep the last 10 and add a timestamp to it. There was actually a thing you can go look up called an LRU cache. And in fact, Quiver, the package Quiver on Pub, Quiver, Quiver, has an LRU map, which is least recently used, which basically means as long as you keep using the entries, they stay in the cache. If you stop using the entries, they'll fall off the bottom of the cache and get rid of themselves out of memory, which is really helpful. That's basically the best way to implement a memory cache. But if you really want a simple way of doing it, DO memory cache, run DO, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
DIO, by the way. DIO. And has anyone done much with Linux yet? Exactly.
So I think you can release packages right now on Linux without using Snapcraft. It's just their default, right? Like you just build you can just build your binary, right? I don't see any reason why you would need to use a snap for it. I think that's just their default preferred way for Ubuntu or something. I can't remember. I think it's the idea is isn't it to not have to ship Flutter in the Flutter library inside of your app because it comes from the Snap library or something. I can't know. I don't remember. There's no reason why you can't put it that way.
Tough question. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Answer is yes.
There we go.
We concur.
Sorry, just want to pick this one up. This is about SEO using server-side rendering. You can do this. However, it's not simple, especially not with Flutter. You can use Dart on the server side to fake rendering some HTML pages and use that for your indexing. But it's all a headache. It's all stuff that's way over OTT, right? Right. Let's build a library. If you're going to do it, build a library and share it with everyone because everyone's going to be repeating the same pattern otherwise, right?
I like Hasib's question. If you want to bring that up, Scott.
Hasib's.
I like it because I've solved it. I did it for my current app. So here's the deal. So removing local data means you also have to understand what local data you've created that's related to this particular login. Now, first off, it's a little strange to have an app on a mobile phone where you log in and log out. No? You sure?
Maybe the timing on that. It's not strange to have an app on a mobile phone.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. No. It's not strange to have an app on a mobile phone. But my client needed to have the ability to log out and log in as some other user. And so we had to have ability to erase all of the state variables that were related to that person being logged in. And guess what? We're using RiverPod. We can drop into RiverPod a ref.watch, which is the way you say this provider depends on another provider. And so I made all the ones where the data had to be erased then depending on the auth that we're already getting from Google Auth. And so all of a sudden, boom, everything that's related to that user is automatically gone. And as I'm building each new provider, I ask myself, is this something that I'm going to want to have erased when I log out? And I just add this ref.watch.auth provider.
And so for those who may not know, may not be following the terms, basically when you log out, you lose that auth object. You lose that auth.
Right.
And if everything else depends on the auth,
right,
boom.
It also cascades down.
Yeah, it's really slick. It was really simple. I actually, before I went and did this, I talked about it on, and this is a new resource that's fairly recent. There's a RiverPod Discord server, and Remy himself hangs out in it. So it's really great.
Spoiled it now. Everyone's going to go there.
I know. Well, they have to find it first. They have to find it. It's going to take a bit of work, but it's great because there are great people to answer questions there, and that's where I've got this answer from. But it's basically you depend on the auth provider in any variable that you want to go away when you log out.
I can answer this next. Actually, okay. I was going to say the next question down. I can answer the one-time password one. Actually.
Oh, well, I was just going to say real quick, Simon, if you want to take a look at that. Since we got a lot of good questions today.
Yeah, it's been great. I've enjoyed it. Sorry, I missed last week, everybody. I was
basically
really badly sick.
There's a search and download page. In the search page, all the items that have already been downloaded are labeled, using streams to hold the data on both the different pages. Is that a bad idea?
I don't know.
So maybe this might be something that we came up. So it's not a bad idea as long as your stream is of a list value. So what you're doing is you're streaming back the state of the list, right? If you're streaming back at the series of items, then the stream becomes pointless because you're then capturing the content of the stream. This is a problem that we had. Do you remember we had this before, Mr. Schwartz? What was that project? I can't remember. It was a project where someone was basically sending back each of the items that they wanted to display on their stream.
Oh,
so a stream builder, right? And then you're just essentially you're making like a flick book. You're going from one iteration to the next, meaning that if you do want to display something from a stream, you're having to collect it as a list, which means the stream is pointless in the first place because you might as well just do a feature. So a feature of a list of your data, the items that you're trying to return. Sure, that's no problem. The streams themselves are inherently not bad, right? Like it means that whenever you want to push new, is the difference with just want to set the scenario up. When you use a future, you're doing polling, right? You're essentially saying, I want this data sometime in the future. I want this data sometime in the future. A stream is push. You're saying, give me the latest information. Keep giving me the latest information. And as soon as you send me new information, I'll make the changes on the front end, right? That's the difference between the two mechanisms. It's almost a push, the difference between push and pull, right? So the push mechanism is always more applicable because it means that you don't have to keep verifying and checking for new information, and so it saves CPU cycles in that sense that you're doing less, but also you're having to, as a programmer, having to do less work, which is always a bonus. Mm-hmm.
And dispose of your stream, please.
Definitely. If you're not using, if you're not just putting your stream straight into a stream builder, make sure you manage your stream correctly. You can get into some weird issues without managing them.
Also, there's one thing to watch out for, especially if you're on like 2 pages and you use a hero transition, is to have a way to access the latest value. So that's like one of the biggest problems I feel like with streams for state management is they're inherently asynchronous. So if you want to access something synchronously, for example, for a hero animation, you need it on the same frame, or it's not going to find the matching thing to animate to. So there's a couple of solutions to this, for example, using the Oryx start behavior subject, which exposes the last value it emitted.
It's a value stream. Is the underlying type. So it basically gives you the last value and the stream of values.
Or you could just save the last one yourself, but that's the thing that makes streams a bit hairy, is for me like managing the last value.
I think it's about expectation, because a stream is a series of events, not a stream of a value. So that's the difference between a behavior subject and a published subject, right? Like the the inherent difference between the two. And streams, I think streams are treated in that aspect of what a behavior subject is, but it's really inherently a published subject in that regard, right? It's here's the latest thing. It's not. It's when the event occurs, you're getting it. Not this is the latest thing that occurred in the past, right? Which is essentially what behavior subject is giving you. Anyway, yeah. It sounds good.
Touch on one real quick here. Games. Well, there's a real easy answer to this one. Okay. And it is now in the chat. And that is go there. They are all about games in Flutter, all about making them easy. And just about anything you would want to know about writing games in Flutter, you can pick up from there.
There's also a bunch of other packages as well, like not just to put in Flames Court, but there's 2D sprite engines. There's all sorts out there.
So also one interesting thing I've played around a couple of months ago is there's a package for the ECS pattern in Dart, which is actually working pretty well. It doesn't take care of any rendering whatsoever, so you will still need either Flame or have to implement the rendering yourself. But if any of you want to learn about ECS, it's a completely different paradigm to what you've ever done before, but I felt like it was super interesting and super fun to learn. Focus on like performance and flexibility of components. But yeah, it's kind of, you have to take a look yourself if you want to understand why it's so different.
And for people who don't know, what is ECS?
Well, it's like a paradigm. A lot of people call it. It stands for Entity Component Framework. So inside Flutter, you have components, and components manage data and data and functions. So they hold the data and they also manipulate the data.
I think.
And so what ECS basically does, it separates holding data and acting on that data. So all you have is like these data components and kind of systems which interact with data and update them.
It's another pattern. It's another like NVC, like none of these patterns, basically.
It isn't really a pattern.
Okay, it's a paradigm. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a framework. It's a paradigm. It's a library. It's whatever.
It's
now, what's going to say? The interesting thing about game development, and I think a lot of people don't quite understand it. It's different to app development, but it's more about the management of data than anything else, right? Like you have a lot of entities, you have a lot of game state. You're trying to manage all this, trying to manage it in a very efficient way because there's a lot, and you only want to interact with what is around the player. For instance, like these games that are like open world. It's like. It's not really to the programmer. It's just the player can see. It's in front of them. The rest can't be loaded in the memory. You don't have infinite memory, right? So there's tricks and all sorts that go into making games to make it all possible. And that's the thing you need to learn. To be honest, the output that you see on the screen is only one part of game development. The actual building of a game itself is in the game logic and that behavior. The rendering is just like, make normally down to the game engine itself that you're using. That is just display this on the screen, right? Here's the thing you need to display. There's not really much to it in that regard, right? Like you'll get kickbacks from like callbacks on like collisions and other things, right? That's what the engine's good at. But when it comes to actually building a game, it's all about the game logic and behavior. Anyway, I want to answer this one question before it goes away off the list. Not receiving an app identification ID in OTP SMS, so one-time password SMS. I'm using phone authentication from Firebase Auth. Can you please help me? Just list all points of failure, maybe. I can tell you exactly what's probably going wrong is they're not sending it out. So they limit the number of sendouts that you're doing. So if you're not receiving it whilst developing, it's probably because you've hit a limit within a period of time. So if you go into Firebase Auth, under the phone auth section, you'll find test numbers. You type in a test number that you just make up. And when you use that in one-time password, there's a fixed one-time password that you put in for testing. So you can put in there, you put in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is my number. And the one-time password is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you'll be able to log into your app with those credentials as your test credentials. But there's no reason why you won't receive a one-time password apart from them limiting because they don't want the system to be abused, and for the SMSs cost money. So yeah, that's probably why.
Okay, and whoops.
Sorry, I was going to take this one next.
Well, wait. Okay, I think we already answered that one, but just real quick, anything to do with metal and also caching, what you're probably going to want to do in all seriousness is to head on over to there and join the Google group for asking questions, because members of the team do answer questions there. And Eric Seidel is usually the authority on what's latest. It changes quickly, though.
I'm going to put something in because everyone's missed this. This is actually the official page for this problem. And it also talks about how you build your skill warm-up cache and how you ship in your app and so on. I don't know what the current state is, but if you go down to the very bottom, it says future work and it links to the issue tickets that are tracking this issue. And you'll be able to look at where it is from now. As far as I know, it's not hit stable yet. They might have put some stuff in stable so they can test and verify things, but it's not actually ready for people to use as far as I understand.
Like, subscribe, tweet.
Right. Yeah. Tell everyone about it.
So, I'm sorry, Simon, what was that one you were looking at for Firebase? I'm not sure. Did we already answer
Can you use Firebase for authentication only and not use their database? Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm sorry. Oh, I answered that one in chat, actually. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Or no,
it's interesting because actually on a project I've done recently, it is just used for authentication. So they've got great auth libraries, just use it for the authentication side. Database is kind of interesting. People say Firebase and think of it as database, right? Firebase is a database, and it's not. That was the original concept because it was originally a real-time database only. But Firebase itself is now a suite of mobile products that help you build mobile apps. So it's totally devoid of database, no problem.
Not sure. I heard so many people become afraid of Navigator 2.0. I never went that direction. I just stuck with the tried and true.
So I've done three talks on Navigator 2. I mean, there's a couple of people that have made some packages that supposedly help. I haven't tried with Navigator 2. That's why I say supposedly. I couldn't say to their validity, but it's just a different way of approaching navigation. And I think that's the problem. It's about getting your head around it. Once you get your head around it, it actually works out. It makes more sense. So it's about your UI replicating your state and your state. And so basically you have to manage your navigation stack, right? And then the UI and the screen will react to that. So it's not like the push pop and then the state of your navigation stack is being kept inside the UI inside Flutter. That's not the case. It's basically keeping the state within your app and then saying, based on my current representation of the state, show me those screens. That's the difference, right? Now, on top of that, you still have Navigator 1. So the idea of Navigator 2 is a combination of the two. You still have your you basically do the declarative approach of Navigator 2 for your main screens, but then when you need to pop up a dialog or a bottom sheet or some other thing like that, that's a temporary change to your user interaction that's just meant to be in front of them for that time. That's when you use navigator.push, right? And those will always appear on top of the declarative stack. But yeah, you don't have to use the router. So people have seen this router stuff and all the complexity behind router. Just don't use it. Just use the pages bit, which is just literally adding a pages array to the navigator widget. I think it's also about maybe how you integrate with Navigator 2 inside your UI. I think people need to play around with just using their own navigators and things like that, and on screens and understanding actually how Navigator works. The best thing I can say is look at my talks on navigation. Google them, you'll find them. 1 and 2.
Here, and this one is from Norbert for a ways back there. There is a system for game development. So you can take a look there in the chat for that link. We also have a question that really, it's so vague, it's unanswerable. But basically, I'm making an app that is an X clone, something clone, doesn't matter. How do I do it, and what database should I use? Basically, you're asking, how do I write an app, and what database should I use?
It depends on what app you're building.
You need to do some research. I'm sorry, you need to do some research. There's really,
I saw this one. If the local data is simply a static variable or in the UI class, and do you want to restart my app, clear all the variable data? Well, one thing, there's a cheap trick you can do if it's in the UI, and that is change the key on the first widget in your app. So you could call a function that updates the key in the very first subtree of your app, and in doing so, it will rebuild all the widgets below, lose all their state, and that's it. You've just cleared all the variables in the entire tree. It's a bit drastic, but it does work. I think there's a package out there called like Flutter Restarter or something. I can't remember what it's called. That does that. It literally is the solution. The other one about static variables.
Ask about performance.
Yeah, it will kick your performance, but that's what you're essentially doing. You're saying, I want to rebuild everything, right, including all the UI, not just the state, right? Static variables, don't use them. that's the answer to that one. Or when you press the log out button or whatever it is in your app, your restart button, clear the variable, right? There is no, to be honest, just don't use static variables. It's not going to help you because they're kind of like, well, this is the problem you're seeing now. They stick around. The solution that you're using to solve is the wrong way about going about it. So many people do this where they go, oh, I need to access this thing over here, and rather than pass it through the stack or other mechanisms to pass it around, they go, oh, make it static and just set it. Well, that's what you've just done. You've just made a global variable. Right.
Yeah.
And that state is now not linked to its context. It's now linked to the entire application as a whole. And that's the problem that you've now sort of put yourself in. So yeah, don't use static variables.
Thank you, Norbert, there we go. Thank you, Norbert, for yet another one. And that was in chat. I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer this next one, but I think it is specific enough and rather important to the person who's writing it. They're wondering about Stripe versus WebView for a reason. The app was rejected for using Stripe, and part 2 of this, okay, they were told to use another package instance of the current package. What?
Okay, hang on. First of all, the first bit.
Yes.
Was rejected for using the Stripe SDK?
Yeah, it's very strange.
What? That needs more context. It might be, is it Apple saying that you're trying to sell goods and not using the Apple services? Because that's not because you're using Stripe, it's because you're making payments, not using Apple's in-app payment system. Right, that's
where they can take up
where they take a cut of the money. Right, that might be what that falls into, and that I can understand because they have very particular rules around their monopoly of the marketplace. Yeah, and it literally is that. It's like you give us 20%, or we won't let you use it. You put your app out there. You know, it literally is gangster monopoly. Anyway, And then the second part, they said use another package instance of the current package. Don't quite get that, but it's not risky if the package is deprecated again. We have to migrate again. But if I use WebView, is this because like there's a updated version of the SDK? The old SDK is out of date. Like the old SDK is using deprecated features of the OS, maybe, and then they are saying you need to use the latest version of the SDK, and now you've got and it might get deprecated again and things like this. If that is the case, that's always how programming works. That's it. That's it. Old stuff gets deprecated and you can't use it because it's no longer maintained and you have to use the latest stuff. And you always have to keep your dependencies up to date. So this is just ABC. Yes, if you use a WebView, you've basically said, I'm taking it out of the problem, out of the app, and now I've moved the problem to now WebView. And it means that, yes, when you make payments, it will always be up to date, However, you might now have to maintain a web view, a web server, who knows what. Like, there's other.
And Apple might complain about that, depending on.
I'm not. Well, we won't go there. But yeah, to be honest, it's whatever feels right for the app. I mean, to be honest, web views is never normally the way to go. Web views are slow. They eat up a lot of resources. Those things twice over. And they're just difficult to interact with because it's a completely different environment, and you've got there's limited ways of moving data back and forth. So it's just your choice, really.
Okay. So I've got one for Randall, real quick. Randall, this question is for you. Where can I get the blue round sparrow?
Apparently,
it's not a sparrow. It's a hummingbird.
Yeah.
It's a fat
hummingbird. Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Did you know it's a hummingbird? At least some of you knew it was a hummingbird.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find real quick. Boy, we've actually had a lot of chat today.
What would be the ideal time to learn Flutter? I'd say between 2 and 4 p.m.
Right, hang on.
Well, yeah, exactly. And also, okay, Randall did answer this question about the sparrow.
Okay.
No, Randall already answered the question about the sparrow.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. That was my comment on that. Yes.
So,
I'm in line. I'm in line. Get behind me in line. That's what it is. So,
I'm going to quickly answer this. I am receiving OTP, but not app identification for auto verify OTP. I don't know what that is. App identification for auto verify.
Going to answer this quickly.
Yeah. Sorry. No. I mean, you've got now. When I first read it, I thought this was about the autofill hints. So on a text field, you can add an autofill hint for one-time password, and it'll automatically fill in the box for you. So when you get a one-time password, it automatically puts it into the app for you. Maybe that.
I don't
know.
And we're coming up on the top of the hour, so we should probably talk.
Yeah, I know we're getting there. And Noel is asking how much time it should take to learn Flutter. That's going to depend on how many hours per week you want to put into it. And it also depends on your background, whether you're coming from another mobile framework, or if you're coming from web design, or if you're coming from pure backend. If you're coming from pure backend, you're going to need to learn about things like aspect ratios and material design and human interface guidelines. If you're coming from web, you're going to need to learn about patterns, about logic programming, callbacks, use of futures, things like that. If you are coming from another mobile framework, you should be able to pick it up very quickly because you already know about all those concepts. And that's not that bad. Now, speaking of some of those concepts, the most optimal way to build a responsive app, widgets should we use? How should we use them? In short, the quickest answer to this, dig into the aspect ratio, the fractionally sized box, and the expanded,
and layout
the
builder,
flexible, and what else, Simon?
Layout builder.
Layout builder. Dig into those, play around with them, see what they will and will not do, see how you can blow them up and make them catch fire. Because when you figure out how to fix those problems, then you'll really begin to understand how they work.
So quick point there. If you're trying to make a breakpoint, there's actually a package called Breakpoint that does this, right? It does the whole breakpoint thing and gives you those things and does it with Layout Builder. So by oh my good, Davis.
Yeah, Rody Davis did a bit of work regarding
Rody. Yeah, of course it's. Sorry, God, names escaped me at the moment. Yeah.
He made the package as a scaffold, which kind of takes the mentality that you shouldn't really worry about the actual way stuff is laid out, but rather how it should be logically.
Simon, stop. Folks, Simon and I both have control of the production function.
Yeah, go on.
But yeah, that's an interesting package to check out. Basically allows you to have this common navigation thingy on mobile. You have it in the sidebar, and desktop you have it in a separate part of the screen. That's an interesting thing to think about responsiveness, is to build widgets that kind of not really have knowledge about your specific domain, but know how users navigate on the different devices. Meaning, on desktop, you don't want to have too much nesting because it's a lot of clicking. Mobile, you just have a small screen size, so you cannot spread it out all over. So yeah, might be worth checking out.
I mean, there's all sorts, like, there's not to mention, like, if you're doing tablet, right, you want like side-by-side views and all sorts of other ways of handling better use of the screen real estate.
Right.
One real quick on this one. The short answer to this, I believe, is no. But the other thing I'm very confused on is, why would you need to do this?
Right.
Using 2.23, but want to go back to 1.2.2.6.
There was just that problem. Is this the same person that had the problem with Stripe? Context is everything, people. You need to put your original stuff in a follow-up, because we can't keep track of it all.
But
yes, it is. Yeah.
If you want to go back to a specific version, there's actually a way. So you can take a look inside the Flutter repository and like search where the tag was added for a version. Just look for the version commit hash
using FVM.
Yeah, but even there, you sometimes need a hash to have.
It's not that. I think the problem is saying that is there any way to use all packages will auto be updated. Basically, he's got several packages in PubSpec that are linked to a certain version of Flutter, and when he downgrades, he wants to know, can he just downgrade all of them? And the answer is no, there isn't a magical one. However, if you change all of your version numbers to the word any, or just remove them, and then you do Flutter pub upgrade, it will resolve all of the versions. And then you go into your PubSpec log file. You can take the versions out of your log file and put them into your PubSpec YAML, and you've basically done that. There's an article by Rody Davis, I think. Wasn't it Rody Davis? Was it Rody Davis? No.
I don't know.
Finnish. What's his name? Now working with Superlist.
Eero.
Eero did a blog post on this a long time ago.
Interesting side fact. If you have like a lot of packages, this could take a bit of time, because solving these kinds of issues is NP complete. So
I was going to say,
it's basically a very hard issue to solve.
I'm still waiting to do a PubSpec YAML where you end up having to solve the Towers of Hanoi to be able to do it.
Yeah. And another thing you might be tempted to do is put any after all of your packages and leave it that way. This can cause you so many other problems.
People will hunt you down and kill you.
Oh, no. Yeah.
If you publish it.
Because can you say breaking changes?
Yeah.
Android Studio or VS Code? Neither. IntelliJ.
Hey.
IntelliJ has all of the toys and none of the Android bloat. So it's like a light beer that actually tastes good.
I'm going to mention this one here. Regarding rejections, I've got rejection from the App Store because of using cookies in the web view app transparency in the new version of iOS. How can we control web view cookies? The answer is they're automatically disabled. You have to enable them, I'm pretty sure. However, if you go into when you go into your App Store listing, there's a new privacy section. You had to fill out the form to say what you're using the cookies for, and then you're fine with using cookies. They haven't got a problem using cookies, but not telling the users why you're using the cookies. And that's what the new privacy thing is about. So you go find that in the privacy section of the App Store listing, and you can update that. And then when you do your update, it will be in consideration with the new privacy things that you've done.
Do you see this one about the Firebase auth with the random string? I'm not quite sure.
Is there any staggered grid view that scrolls smoothly? Staggered grid view doesn't scroll smoothly.
Yeah, there must be something else going on there.
It should do. If it's not, is this a web thing? Is it web that you're doing this on? Because that's probably a web-related issue with scrolling, which is a different issue entirely.
Probably a much bigger issue.
Are constraint boxes useful for responsive? Yes.
Everything's useful for responsive.
So guys, quick I have to leave. So
We're all going to shut down soon, actually. Anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, there's one other question though, and actually then we'll close it down. That has been waiting, and this is a 3-parter to try and get all the context. There's this. Okay, normally sends in this format.
Random string at the end. Yeah.
Okay, they're not getting the random string, and they clarified something a little bit more. I believe this is related or no?
It might be. The auto-filling is auto-verifying without typing OTP. You can still do that without having to type the OTP. You don't need that random string. The random string is not there for that. It's probably because it gets copied to the clipboard, and then the clipboard contents has not changed, and the random string is enabling that to always change and detect change. So once you receive it's probably, I don't know what the FB Firebase package. I don't know how the Firebase package deals with this, but probably, to be honest, you just don't even need it. Like just put autofill on your form, and then it will come through, and then the keyboard gives you the option to fill it in. And once they fill it in, you get the on editing complete call back on the text field, and then you can say submit and verify, right? I don't know. Like you've got a bug, fix the bug.
Any way to load a Flutter web app fast, it's delaying 2 to 4 seconds. There are so many different things that could be, although I will give you credit. You're talking about using Flutter Web to create an app and not a website. So that's a plus. It puts you ahead of a lot of people in this world, believe me. But there's 1,000 different things that.
Okay, I can tell you right now. Two solutions to this. One, deferred imports. Right.
Possibly, yeah.
Can you bring that back up to some?
If it's big enough, yeah.
So the 2 to 4 seconds is just there's just that much content to download, and a lot of web apps have this same problem. It's nothing to do with Flutter specifically. It's because out of the box, it just downloads everything in one go. This is an interesting point because once it's downloaded, you don't download it again. So the next time you load the page, you have 0 delay, right? So the 2 to 4 second delay that you're saying on the counter app is just the initial download of the engine files. Once it's downloaded, they're cached in the browser, you haven't got this problem. So there is no need to make it faster, really, right? However, if you do want to reduce that initial lag time, then it's deferred imports. And basically, that's where you can essentially asynchronously load in sections of code. There's a whole section on it in the Dart/Flutter documentation that will explain all about it. But basically, yeah, you put the word deferred before you import or after it. I can't remember. And it allows you to it's import this deferred and then the alias, I think, and then you can do alias.load, and it will load in the import separately. So if you've got a section of your app you're trying to offload, you can do it with that.
So it loads everything else, renders the page, and then the deferred thing is loading while the page is already rendered.
Yeah, I mean, not just that. It's more a case of you get to pick and choose when you want it to be loaded. So you can say, okay, now I'm rendered on the screen. Now go load these other things, right? Or when the user taps on this button, then go fetch these extra things that I need to go to that section of the app, for instance. But it allows you to basically cut up your app into chunks.
One last question that I want the answer to really is why I'm shoving this one in. A grid view that has different size grids. I believe what they're talking about is a grid view with different boxes. So like one is large and the other one, a couple more are small. Staggered grid view.
Is this the same person that asked about staggered grid view earlier? No. Yeah? No, it's Phantom. Okay. So yeah, no, it's called staggered grid view. You'll find it on Pub. It's been around a long time. It was who was it that did staggered grid view? Roman Rostel.
Oh, okay.
This one.
There's somebody we need to have on here.
It's been a long time since I spoke to him.
Yeah, we've had Robbie on here a few times had Robbie, we've had Remy. Now we need to get Roman.
And this
Frenchmen,
allows
by
you
the
to do
way.
lots of different configurations and ways of doing it. So most of the packages, is there a way of grids that has different size grids without using a package? Most packages have tried it really bad performance-wise. If staggered grid view is bad performance, I'm kind of curious what platform. Is it web that you're doing this on? I'd really like to hear Minnesota.
You're still here, Minnesota?
Because it does make a difference. If you want to do it yourself, you can still do it, but it all depends on what you're trying to scroll. So if you're making an infinite list of a lot of items, you have to do some stuff with slivers, which is not what I recommend for a beginner. So if your content is limited and you just want it to be staggered like that and appear nice in a grid view, then you can just do a column with one big column with rows in it and have them different heights, and you can do all that yourself. That you can break it up into panels and do that, and it's fine. So just build the layout that's staggered and fill in the boxes with the content that you want, right? Like, I mean, there's a bunch of ways of making it more dynamic. If you want to have 3 different layouts, and you could switch the layout out depending on the count of items and things like that. You could do all sorts of fun things. The limitations are infinite. So
no, they're not. The limitations are infinite?
No, the other way around. Whatever.
Simon, go get more Pepsi.
The
Pepsi
limits
Max.
are infinite.
Sleep. That's what I need.
Dr. Pepper. Okay, and in Phantom's case, it's Android, and Matosa is mobile, sometimes desktop.
Should not have a problem with staggered
Minnesota.
grid view on mobile or desktop. If you've not tried that one, please do. If you are having a problem, you'll find Romani Rastel quite responsive on a lot of things. It could be that your problem is actually not related to the grid view, but what you put in the grid view. And what I mean by that is you might be having a situation where you're rebuilding the cells when you didn't mean to. Like, make sure you've got proper keys on these things. You might be on each rebuild, which happens when you scroll, especially when you scroll, it might be refetching new streams of data and redoing all the UI. There might be some other bugs in there that is causing it to do a lot of work when you scroll. So there's actually in the performance tab inside, I can't speak, IntelliJ or Android Studio, if you have the Flutter plugin, there's a performance tab and allows you to enable widget build tracking.
Yes.
And that will tell you how many times a widget has been built in the frame. And if you scroll, you should not be seeing that these widgets that you have are being rebuilt all the time, right? That should definitely not be happening. So if that's happening, then that's where your problem is.
So yes, use the tools. The tooling team works very, very hard on
an
those.
example
and
here, just to follow up on this. I just noticed that it says that they're getting the data from AliExpress, Alibaba screen, but don't do API calls during your scroll, during you bring the data in the screen. Don't, if you're requesting content for that tile when you scroll, like when it comes on the screen, that's bad. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's why it's slow, right? So yeah, because when that data comes in, it loads it in. It might change the size, then sort of it's a layout. It's actually a known layout problem. But basically, you then fill in the content on the screen, and that pushes everything below down. That means you have to recalculate the layout of everything below, and it's a compounding issue. So yeah, you want to know the contents of your data up front and not download it asynchronously, especially when scrolling.
Alrighty. Norbert has been trying to run away for 10 minutes now. So
yeah, sorry. No, but we're going to call the end of the stream. Hopefully everyone got some good information.
Yes. Thank everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we can get Anna on here next week and wrap up the global conference, which was 3 days of incredible information. And again, if you think this has been great information, like, subscribe, tweet, tell the world, and tell the world they didn't miss the stream. They can watch the video.
Right.
Yep.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.